Can you see me? I have a new way to get on the screen.
He's popping up. He's like like one of those.
Is he rising from the dead?
He's like the Undertaker.
Nap in peace.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Track Packers podcast for episode 4 of season 2. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to all the Patreon subscribers for checking out our additional content with the CNC podcast. As well, be sure to like, share, and comment your thoughts on racing today. We have some racing that's been taking place early in the winter. We're going to be gearing up for the racing coming up soon, and hopefully a couple months once the weather decides to figure itself out. But we have everyone here. We have myself, Mason, along with Becca, John, and Mr. Jessup Pelkey, rounding out the field for today's lineup. And we are presented by Hitch Harness. Hitch Harness, Tyler Hall, thank you so much for sponsoring this podcast. He developed a product with the Hitch Harness, basically to set it up in the back of your truck bed for multiple purposes. It's for a safety aspect to store your hitches while you're traveling, and so it's not rolling around in the back of your truck, and also kind of help as a convenience to ease in the timing of getting in and out of the truck bed during transit and travel. And so a very cool product. He's got a lot of products on that website, hitchharness.com. So be sure to check that out. They also have been recently uploading some chassis dollies to the site as well. So kind of help with the ease of working on the car in the shop, whether you wanted to get it washed or do some setup. So check out the website. Thank you to Tyler Hall and Hitch Harness for sponsoring this podcast. And so how is everyone doing on this cold February weekend? Becca, you look like you're all bundled up.
She's in a beanie.
It is beanie season. And I felt like I was in beanie heaven when we were down at Daytona 1 week ago, going through the pits at Volusia, because almost all the big names had beanies for sale because it was kind of cold after the sunset, and it was very hard to not buy all the beanies. But I'll have to
ask her how many beanies she bought.
How many beanies did she buy?
Jessup bought me one.
Exactly.
I only bought one.
You bought one?
That's it?
I don't remember you buying one.
Jessup, I was gonna buy it. He beat me to it because I told him I was gonna go buy one, and then
John, she had her best Mrs. Miserable impersonation going on in the stands.
I was not. I was just fine.
She was all bundled up like.
She's a little miserable.
She's a fair weather race fan.
She is. If the weather's not nice, she will not be at the track.
No, she's miserable.
I'm just bummed that because Jessup got Becca a beanie, but he didn't buy me anything.
It's normal.
Okay, to be fair though, I go to Florida to get away from the cold. I didn't really pack for the cold. So had I known that it was going to be rather chilly, I would have packed for chilly, and I did not have anything of the sort. So I had to basically layer up in like 4 layers to try and stay warm. And then I stole some blanket that somebody left on the, you know, have you, if you guys have ever been to Jamestown, they have how they save seats with blankets. I literally stole someone's blanket because they didn't show up, and it was like halfway through the race night, and I was like, you know what, taking that, and I felt so much better.
This is a
Sonia
true
would
story.
be proud of us.
This is a true story.
Oh goodness!
And then Jessup took said blanket and is going to gift it to John later tonight.
What?
Yeah, we got you a blanket, John.
We had you
An
several
authentic
surprises.
blanket from Volusia.
Yeah. Because we know you don't have enough blankets.
I'm not the only guilty person who got to use the blanket. Mason used it on the flight home.
This is true. It was a very comfortable
mean,
blanket.
You know, John, the funny part
Mason,
about this
did
is
you decide to sleep in the plane since you had to get up so early?
Yes.
Oh,
the funny
I'm so
part
proud
about
of
it,
you.
John, the whole time, Becca's like, I'm cold. I'm like, well, we're past the midway point of the races, and
I
these
don't think I
people have
complained
not
about
shown
being
up. So
cold.
just grab the blanket. Becca wandered off. I
She's
sat on it to
always
warm it
so
up.
cold.
So I threw the blanket on Becca. She's like, now I'm warm.
I think she needs
And-
more beanies.
So then
don't think I
the
said
rest of
any
the
of
night,
this.
they're like, are we just leave it? We don't need it. I'm like, well, they're just gonna throw it away. And the people never showed back up, and I guarantee you they just threw the other blankets away. So the whole time I was getting chastised about it. Next thing you know, the only person not to have used it was me.
Yeah, that's a fair statement.
I have a question before we go
Yes.
forward. So, was that the last night for Volusia down
Yep.
there? Okay, so with that stuff either, because I was thinking to myself, I'm like, what if some fans like tape the blankets down for the entire week, and then they were going to come pick it up after the races were done?
There
They
was
never
like
showed
8
up for the
blankets down
features.
there.
So, okay, just wanted to make sure because that does happen at certain tracks.
Well, let's wave the green flag on the official start of episode 4, and let's get into who or what are you repping. And Jess, if you get to start today, who or what are you repping?
You know, while we were down at Volusia, I got some pretty cool shirts. I got a neat looking kind of a throwback Scott Bloomquist shirt. And while he was not racing there, because he's got some health issues and needs some surgeries, it has the old Scott Bloomquist late model on it. And, I was pretty excited about that because everyone's just trying to look a little too modern for my taste. And I'm more of a throwback guy. And, it is kind of cold here today. So I have to put my new beanie on. I got my beanie because
That's my
it's
beanie.
beanie weather. And it is my new Bobby Pierce number 32 beanie. It's very fashionable. And yeah, it's the beanie I bought.
Very, very true. It is beanie season. Becca, who or what are you repping?
Okay.
I want you to know she's already worn that beanie once.
He has multiple times actually.
Hats don't count, so it's fine. Anyways, I am repping the 52nd annual Dirt Car Nationals down at Volusia t-shirt. This is actually the t-shirt Mason bought for John, and I decided to wear this for today's podcast. So look how great this shirt is. It's a little big on me. Here, I kind of tied it back. There we go. It's a nice little shirt. Got some
It
bright
looks like
colors.
she's drowning.
It's very colorful.
It is very colorful. But yeah, this is the shirt that we will probably get you. We'll one day somehow find a way to get this to John. But
Oh, okay.
anyways, this is the shirt Mason bought for John.
I like how Becca's bought literally nothing down there.
It sounds like Becca didn't do a whole lot of spending down there at all from
No, she
buying
spent
things.
I bought
stuff.
stuff.
It's not our money.
I
or
was just
her
gonna say,
money.
but maybe not for anybody else, just for herself.
She collected a blanket, a new beanie, now John's shirt. I'm very disappointed.
I'm too. I'm very
Oh,
disappointed in her.
What else did we? Becca got a.
Don't tell them what I all got.
Oh my gosh!
I'm
she
gonna
got
wear
so
them
many
one
things.
day.
She acquired it through everyone else.
No, I bought several things on my own.
Would you like
Yes.
to name them?
No, I will not, because I'm gonna wear them. Why would I ruin the surprise?
The surprise is that she didn't buy it.
Well, John,
It's
who
probably
or what
Jessica.
are you repping for this episode?
I went retro, so I am repping since Jamestown Speedway's banquet is coming up here very, very, very soon. I am repping an old 2008 stock car Stampede shirt.
Oh, wow.
So I went retro
That's
for sure on this one.
I'll say that's a very simplified shirt.
Yes, it was a very simplified one back in 2008.
Back when racing was simple.
In some ways, yes, I do agree with that. As far as who I'm repping, kind of in a memorial type sense, but I'm repping the USMTS shirt. I got this down in Humboldt in 2021, I believe. The reason I'm wearing it is because we had some news in the last couple weeks that we lost Chris Clark. And I don't know if any of you have ever met Chris Clark, the modified driver, but very, very kind guy to talk to. I talked to him last year in Watertown. I would say he's not one of the top runners, but he was always there showing up, kind of supporting the series. And just a very kind gentleman to talk to. Was the sportsmanship recipient, I believe, last year. And so very sad news for the USMTS community. So wanted to rep the series shirt and just send out our condolences to Chris Clark and his family during that time. So that is who and what we are repping for episode 4. We actually have a track packer report now, since the 3 of us were in Florida. I'll start with John, though. I know you were busy this last weekend bowling wise, but were you able to take in the 500 or anything racing related?
I did. I watched the 500. I had it on tape. So I watched it when I got home Sunday night. I also watched the truck race on Friday night. I was kind of disappointed. Not in the truck race as a whole for any reason, but the darn weather. Mason brought the moisture with him down there on that Friday. So the truck race, which is usually one of the best races of the weekend, they were just plagued by weather, unfortunately, on that one. And all the crews and drivers and sponsors and fans can thank Mason Aaron for bringing the added moisture to Florida during that time frame, and it has now continued into California. The 500 though, overall, I actually thought it was a pretty decent race overall when I was watching it. Lot of side-by-side racing, not a ton of passing to begin with, but everybody was kind of saving their cars, and then a pretty good battle towards the end of the race. So I was pleasantly surprised with the 500 compared to what it was this year compared to what it was last year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'll start with Beck on this. Beck, give us your experience at Volusia first before we go to the 500.
It was beanie season.
No, Volusia was great. It was my second time being back at that track. I first went back in 2017. So it was good to be back. It was great just to be back at the dirt track in general. It's been a couple months. So it just felt so good to be back at the track. The stands were packed. The pits were packed. I'd never seen big block mods before. So they looked cool. They sounded fast, and they put on a phenomenal race. So that was super fun. Unfortunately, we went Friday night because we picked that particular night because we thought the weather forecast looked better than Saturday. And that was quite the opposite. They got 3 late model heat races in before it started to sprinkle, or as the social media post put it, rain heavily. And so
persistent heavy rains.
That's literally what they said.
it was just so weird because there really weren't that many like storm clouds over Volusia. It just would just sprinkle, then stop, and then kind of sprinkle and then stop. I feel like if this particular race would have been held in like the Midwest where we're from, they would have had cars on the track just working the track in, and the moment that the skies opened up, or cleared, we would have been racing back underway. But so that was kind of disappointed that they basically waited around for like 2 hours before they finally decided to call the races. So it was fun. We basically killed the time just going through all the different vendors that they had there. All the big names had a pair t-shirt, trucks and carts, or whatever you want to call them, right? Just different vendors. They had Volusia's really cool. They don't have concessions. They have food vendor trucks. So they had like a pizza truck. They had a barbecue truck. They had like a Thai truck, ice cream truck. There was like a burger truck. So we ate and walked through all the merchandise trailers. That's what I'm trying to say. And then they also had like a beer stand as well. So inside the beer stand, you could watch the live broadcast, which obviously during a rain delay, there wasn't a whole lot to watch right there. And then once they canceled the races, we hit the car and drove by Daytona, and then those guys too canceled. So, and then thankfully the weather was much better on Saturday, where we could take in full night's racing, and just felt good to be back at the track. So
Tessa, remember we have a clip
I know.
about beer stands.
Mhm.
I was saying we might have to dig that out of the archives. I want
We
to see
might
if I
have
can
to
find
dig that out of the archives and put it in this clip.
And if you guys come over here, there's more beer.
Got more beer, more water.
Oh man, fans don't know what they've missed out on over the last several years. Jessup, what was your Volusia experience like?
Well, it was a good time. Besides Mason being greedy on Friday night, his thirstable quench to raining out races. It was really disappointing. I mean, he even had the NASCAR people stunned. They didn't know what struck him. They were like, there is nothing on the radar, and it just kept misting. I mean, heavily raining down on Daytona International as we drove by, and Mason just was like, if I could get into sight of the track, I can just cancel it. One more race. I've canceled one in one night, but two is the ultimate feat for a person to cancel races. And I was really impressed. Mason canceled not one, but two. I mean, literally, we were driving out of Titusville, and it was like, there's a 5% chance of rain. And we're all like, yay. And then all of a sudden, we're getting closer. And there's a 35% chance of precipitation. I'm like, oh, well, that's still pretty good. And then we get there, it's nice and dry, and it's warm. There's nothing like to be concerned. And all of a sudden, this mist comes out of nowhere and the temperatures drop. And Mason's sitting there over up at the top of the bleachers. Yes, let it rain. Let my powers be bestowed upon you, and I will smite thee, as I do not like super dry tracks.
Well,
Truly
to
is
be
Rain
fair,
Man.
at that
The Rain
point,
Man came, the Rain Man conquered, and the next night we had to sit through super cold racing, which was kind of a receipt by the racetrack and the racing gods to Mason, as he doesn't like cold weather, and the racing gods made him sit through cold weather racing, and I sat there comfortable as Becca and Mason were forced to beanies.
well, I will say to be fair, like the first three late model heat races on Friday night were kind of snoozers. There was not really any passing. So I was trying to help to get like widen out the track a little bit so there was at least multiple grooves. Kind of overdid it though, unfortunately.
I just think the racing gods had enough of Mason, and they're like,
Too much torrential rains.
yeah, they were like,
Persistent
Mason
heavy rain.
deserves this. And it was cold, and then Mason was like, come on, precipitation.
I think the reason why we didn't go back racing on Friday night is because there were no B mods to pack the track.
That's probably it. But there were BB mods to pack the track, and they just didn't. And I was like, I was desperately trying to get through to the pits and be like, you guys are close enough. You are close enough. Get your butts on the track and start packing. You are not the main show. Get out there and pack.
Gosh.
If your relative, the B mod or the X mod or the Z mod or the whatever mod, they would have been out there.
Well, my experience at Volusia outside of Friday night was really cool. It's a half-mile track, correct?
Mhm.
It's a very deceivingly looking half-mile track. Like obviously, like we're sitting up close on the front stretch, and once they get around the back stretch, it's a little bit like they're a little far away, but it's a pretty quick half-mile. Like I was actually kind of surprised when I saw the layout of the track from the stands and how it looked. It was cool seeing big block mods for the first time. I agree with Becca on that because they do put up some pretty good speed and they sound pretty cool. Actually, I think they sound awesome. And then the World of Outlaw late model is obviously put on a great show along with the big block mods. Just kind of going over the winners real quick. Matt Williamson won the big block mods with the last lap pass. And then
John,
Hudson
we
Wheel
heard
was
the
late model
greatest
win.
nickname of driver nickname, the Jinja Ninja.
Oh,
Yes. Actually,
And he led like a good chunk of the race too until the end, where I've never seen anyone throw an anchor and hitch themselves to a piano and whatever other heavy weight. It basically looked like he said, I'm going to low gear and I'm just gonna cruise the last 10 laps. He went from leading back to like 10th.
Hey, John.
Holy.
Yeah. Do you know why that was? Because while I have the curse of extra added moisture to the track, we have another curse that is actually becoming more and more prevalent. If you recall the last time all four of us were at Huset's and we were kind of doing like these like little picks in the stands, do you recall someone picking people and they just would have some misfortune or like flipping and mechanical troubles? That would be Senor Jessup down to this corner that managed to pick every person that had a mechanical difficulty the night we were at Huset's, including Kyle Larson, who ended up flipping in his heat race.
Why is it
And-
my fault?
Well,
Why?
we get to Volusia and we were doing the picks throughout the preliminary races, then we get to the main features. And Jessup's bold pick was, I'm going to pick the pole sitter of both races, one of them being the Jinja Ninja.
Hold on. Ginger Ninja was not the inside pole sitter, so you take that back.
Front
You,
row.
hold on. No.
Amend that
Hold
statement
on.
to say
hold
front
on.
row, Mason.
Gosh.
Front row,
I
Mason.
pick front row almost every race.
No, you said
But
pole sitter.
Mason
that's
does get a
caution.
caution flag on that one. I would agree with Jessup on that one too. He was not right.
You
It
go
was
to the
not pole.
back, Mason.
Well, anyways, he picked the front row guy in both races.
John,
And
Tim
somehow,
I picked third, and Tim McCready was on the pole, and they left me Tim McCready. Would you not pick Tim McCready?
I don't think I'd necessarily pick pole sitter because the pole sitter at a track race is
He
not
led.
necessarily what you want to be.
He led like 45 of the 50 lap feature.
So the
don't-
faster
I'm the-
cars got to the front.
You're right. Why didn't any of
think I
you
would have
pick
picked him,
Hudson O'Neal
Jessup.
from
And
23rd?
here's the reason why, because if you would have went through and had first pick on that one too, first of all, you would have picked him because you like to pick everybody on the front row.
I do.
But
It's a strategic advantage.
if Jessup was picking like some of these people, typically they do have bad luck. So I would have went someplace a little bit more drastic.
Yeah, so drivers, if you're starting up in the front row in particular and Jessup picks you, you can basically kiss your winning chances
It's-
goodbye.
Just kiss it goodbye. I mean, you're going to go to the back, or you're going to have some type of mechanical failure or bad luck.
Yeah, at least for McCready's sake, he still ended up in the top 5.
Yep. I mean, two things. If you see Jessup at a racetrack, run away if you're starting up front. If you see Mason at the racetrack, just take cover.
Pack it up.
It's going to rain.
Pack it up and go
Back
home.
it up.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, the Big Block Mods, Matt Williamson won. Hudson O'Neal got his first World of Outlaws win. That was a really, really awesome race going through lap traffic, and had Devin Moran up there. McCready faded to, I think, 4th. And then I think Overton was 5th, who was the guy I
Ricky
was.
Thornton also started deep in the field to finish
Yep.
3rd. So
Yeah, they both, Thornton and Hudson O'Neal, started way back. And so that was a fun race to watch. That was really good.
and while we were down at Volusia, we ran into some people that we know back here in North Dakota. Ran into the Tomlinsons. So that was good to see them at the dirt track. And Marcus actually joked like, heck, if we were going to go to the track races together, we could have just met in Mandan. But it was cool to see familiar faces at Volusia.
Yeah. Yep. Shout out to Marcus and Mariah. I know I saw the Vero Rudes down there. Apparently Jeff Barta was down there too. So there was a good amount of people down there this week, more probably the previous week. But yeah,
I heard there was a lot of Bismarck people at the Daytona race as well.
Really?
Mason, that was the joke of me saying every place we went to. Where are you from? Bismarck. Oh, that's cool. There's been a lot of people from Pittsburgh.
Yes. Every booth we stopped at, they'd ask, where are you guys from? And Jessup, Bismarck. I'm like, no one down here is gonna know what Bismarck is.
Well, there's a lot of people from there here, according to the McDonald's setup.
My goodness, this is too funny.
Yes. I give Jessup credit. He was very excited to share he was from Bismarck.
But it's just
Is it-
easier to tell people that we're from North Dakota.
I was just
and
going to say
they'll
North Dakota. Typically, that's easier.
have- Yeah.
Where are you from? Bismarck. That's cool. It is. It really is. We're better than you, and you know it. We are a
What?
capital city.
Wow. So we get to the 500 on Sunday, and the three of us, we got there, I'd say around 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. Definitely a cool experience. You have to park like a mile north of the track, and then you get bussed down. And so we got to take in like all the pre-race activities outside of the track at the vendor booths, and then in the infield, took a little tour of like where the garage area was at, where the NASCAR and Fox stage is.
We have an entertaining story about that. Just for the inside group, we'll tell people later, but not now.
What?
It relates to how the pits are in Dakota Speedway versus how the pits are at Daytona.
Oh, yeah, I remember this story. Anyways, moving on. Very cool experience. I will say, like, they do, like, obviously the Daytona 500 goes all out on their pre-race activities. So they had a pre-race concert with Dierks Bentley. He performed like seven or eight songs, I think. So a really good show in the infield. The infield was packed with people, by the way, absolutely packed. And then they shifted over to the driver intros on the other side of the infield. And then it was time for the race. And I will say it's my second total NASCAR race. I love being at the track for that experience. There's nothing like being there and actually seeing the speed of the cars go past you down the straightaways. What did you guys think, Becca and Jessup?
I think you left out the Thunderbird show, which
yes,
it was
one of the best songs we've ever done.
basically the equivalent of a smaller air show display. That it was a lot better than what we've seen before. The first time we were there, they did like one flyover, and then they came and landed. And then when we were at Indy, they did two flyovers and then went and landed. This time they were doing flyovers from the left, and then they had some guy rip right across the stands, like right in front of the stands, basically. And it was pretty low, and that had people crapping their pants. That was pretty cool. And then they came over the top, and then they went back over, and then the people they did their really cool formation where everyone scattered, which looked really cool. And that was really cool because you don't get that much. I wouldn't say you don't get that much, but you don't get that level that we saw at a lot of other races. And just to have a flyover is cool, but to have a full-on air show before the race was pretty neat.
Yeah, I will agree. My life briefly flashed before my eyes when I saw the underbelly of one of those fire jets or Thunderbirds just turn right towards the stands. I'm just like, oh gosh. Hopefully I don't become a documentary here in just a minute.
Yeah, the other aspect I thought was pretty neat too was the concert itself. The first time Becca and I went, and I think she'd agree with this, we saw Lady Antebellum, which isn't one of Becca's favorites, but at the time they were pretty at the top of their popularity. And we're like, oh cool, it's gonna be a fun show. And they did like two or three songs, or one of their big songs, and then two of their brand new songs, which nobody had heard of. And then they closed after that third song. They're like, and we're done. And then they all just walked off the stage, and they're like, we're over this. And this time Dierks Bentley did pretty much a mini concert as well. He did about, what would you say, six to eight
He played
songs?
for 30 minutes, so about 8 songs.
Yeah, it was a good amount of time.
Yeah.
And then after the Dierks Bentley concert, we walked across the grass to driver intros and got to see all the drivers make their way out onto the track. So for their to hop in the back of those trucks, and they did their lap around the track. So that was really cool to see them all pretty up close and in person.
Mason gave me a list of people that he told me that I needed to boo for you. So I booed at them.
Yeah, he did.
And I was like, boo, this is from John Breckle. He says, boo, you're not very good. Boo.
Was one of them the driver of the 23? I really hope it was the driver of the 23.
All of that team got booed.
Okay,
and
good.
There was the Gibbs kid got booed. And then I think he said Chastain needed to be booed.
I think Logano and Hamlin got mixed reactions too.
Kyle Busch
both
Hamlin
also got a
got booed
huge
out of the stadium. It was awesome.
Kyle Busch also had a huge reception.
Everyone was
booze.
cheering for Kyle. They were like, stick it to those
I heard
Toyota
boos.
Tommies.
I heard a lot of booze.
And I was like, America, let's go.
And we actually had pretty good seats for the 500, considering I got them kind of at the last minute, but they were actually underneath in the shady part of turn 4. So the guys didn't tell me that I was like burning because I forgot to pack sunscreen. And so I was kind of just like winging it. And the guys didn't tell me that, like, hey, your face looks kind of red.
It
So-
wasn't red at the track.
Was it?
We get back in the car, just beat red. While we're at the track, just how it looks today. It's
Becca's
perfectly
become a
fine.
lobster.
We get onto the bus, leaving, face is fine. 20 minutes down the road from the track, boom.
But we thankfully sat
she
in the
was blushing.
shades. No, thankfully we sat in the shade. We had overall really good seats, and we were right by the concessions, right by the bathrooms. So, and we had really friendly neighbors. Someone so I think this is becoming a trend with NASCAR tracks. You can bring in whatever the heck you want because the people next to us had burgers, hot dogs, sandwiches, and they even brought in a handle of whiskey and offered us drinks throughout the race. And I'm just like, part of me wants to say yes, but I know I need to keep drinking water because I have hardly drank anything all day, and I don't think I should be drinking hard liquor at this point in the day. So,
Oh, I bet you Mason took him up on that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I mean,
Mason was like, give me that. I'll show you how to drink. He was just
Grr.
taking straight shots. And the guy's like,
Doug.
save some for the rest of us. And Mason was like, no, it's not raining. I can't be happy.
That is a good point. Like, I didn't realize, like, because I'm used to going to like a couple of football games, and you really can't bring anything much in the games. But like, yeah, you could bring coolers, you could bring whatever the heck you wanted in there. It was interesting. So, yeah, but otherwise, like the 500 itself, I would say it was pretty good racing. Like John said, the first part, like, they were side by side, but there wasn't a whole lot of moving and shaking or anything like that. Basically, people trying to save the cars for the first portion. And then, like, the last stage, that things kind of started to get a little crazy, had a few wrecks. And yeah, I think the main thing I wanted to see a green flag finish. And unfortunately, they had a couple of wrecks at the end, which didn't allow that to happen. But big congratulations out to Ricky Stenhouse. Big win for him. I think it's been since 2017 was his last win. And so long time coming for him. And so one of the dirt guys in our sport too. He's got a lot of dirt racing experience. And so that's cool to see him get the 500 to start off the year.
and Ricky celebrated at the Waffle House afterwards, which Mason got to experience his first Waffle House down in Florida.
Mason, I'm proud of you.
Mason is a
I
true
saw the
American
pictures.
now.
It looked like you had fun.
I did have fun. I had a great time.
And-
I can't believe that was your first Waffle House ever, though.
Well,
I think the best part was
Nathan needs to get out more.
Mason tried to make it rain
At the 500
Daytona
probably, too.
500.
I
There
saw
were
that it was kind of
clouds,
cloudy
yeah.
at one point, and I was like, uh-oh.
Well, it was funny because who was it? Was it Bob Procris or
Bob Pockris.
he posted something on Twitter like, this is the strangest anomaly that I've ever seen. There's nothing on the radar, and there are clouds building over the track. And I just sat there, I'm like, Mason's here.
It's like, it's Mason.
Mason, would you like to brag about how well you did at go-kart racing?
Oh
yeah,
yes.
tell him about the first race.
Well, the first race was kind of like a kiddie race. We had a
Whoa.
go-kart race in Cocoa Beach or something. And
It's a Mario Kart themed go-kart
Yeah.
track.
So let's talk about the real race. That's the one that matters. The other one, we couldn't even get onto the actual like road course. So Mason's better at Tokyo drifting than both Becca and I. And I will
was getting the
concede
hang
the
of
fact
it.
that Mason beat us pretty handily. And I had to keep spinning out to avoid Becca, and I didn't want to severely injure her and put her in concussion protocol.
Jessup
so she
spent
wouldn't
most
be
of the
there.
time spun out in corners 2 and 3 and 4.
Yeah, it's true because Becca would get super loose, and I'd be like, "Oh no, I better just spin so I don't kill Becca."
Mason,
yeah, well, Jessup
See,
did
he
have spinning
agrees.
on his
He
own
didn't want-
without
doesn't want me to
I
kill
was
assistance.
just gonna
Becca.
say, didn't Jessup just spit out on his own? Like, normal?
yes.
Oh, at
Yes.
least 4 times I did.
Yeah, there we go. That's
It had
fine.
nothing to do with me. I was holding my
No,
own my
that's
line.
that's a load of crap. There's one where Becca got loose and she's in the middle of the track and she goes right in front of both Mason and I. Mason goes low and then Becca darts low, so I end up spinning out going high. I was very disappointed in Becca, to be honest.
Yeah,
But let's talk about the race that really mattered. So, John, you know how Becca and Mason both are diehard and avid Mario Kart fans?
Oh yes.
Well, this track, I find them a track, go-kart track at Cocoa Beach. We got like 20 minutes to kill. And I go, hey, let's go check this track out. And we get there and whatever. It seems it's a double-decker racetrack, so that was kind of cool. And they start explaining the rules, and they're like, it's just like Mario Kart, and you got power-ups and coins, and you can attack people and all this good stuff. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm at a disadvantage. Wrong. They were at a disadvantage. They did not play by the Mario Kart rules, and they got spanked.
I led the damn near the whole race.
No, you
But you
didn't.
didn't
I
win.
lapped you almost like twice.
No, you
But-
didn't.
But you
I
You weren't
didn't
even
win.
within sight of me. Mason definitely wasn't.
I was
in
at
sight. I was
it.
over
Sorry.
a half track around him.
I was just gonna say, Becca, but you did not win. It doesn't matter if you led. Just like in NASCAR, it doesn't matter if you lead a lap anymore. It's all about the win.
I
So-
would have got bonus points for the most laps led.
Yeah, well, NASCAR doesn't acknowledge
say-
most laps led anymore, so
Yeah, if
neither
they give
does
that out
Mario
anymore.
Kart. So, anyways, John, I pulled probably one of the greatest bump and runs ever. So
Was
at
it
the
greater
beginning
than
of the
Jeff
race,
Gordon's?
oh, it was awesome. It was so Becca got the first cart, Mason got the second cart, I got the third cart, and some individual, just call him an individual, poor driving individual, was in the next row over. And we could go out, Becca storms off into the lead, and Mason tries to keep up. And this guy comes out ahead of me, which I'm like, whatever, I'll just go to the inside and pass him. Well, he rams me into the wall. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, I don't really understand this. And I try to go past him again and get rammed into the wall again. And I'm like, well, this guy's kind of a D word, and a Richard Cranium. So I'm like, okay, well, at this point, Mason, this guy's now got into the outside of Mason, and Mason's on the inside, and I'm slowly trying to catch up to them. And these two are trying to battle each other, and this guy hits Mason in a corner, and I'm sitting there watching this, and I'm like, I will not stand for this. So I politely bumped Mason into this guy, which caused both of them to push to the outside, and I'm like, wee to the
It was
inside.
like the clash at the Coliseum where like the guy 4 cars back would ram into the guy like in front of him, and then the guy would ram into the second place car and then bump the first place car out of the way. Yeah.
It was awesome. I gave a nice gentle push. I was trying to push Mason through the gap, and Mason couldn't handle the bump draft, and Mason plowed this guy out of the way, which jarred him, and Mason came to almost a complete stop. And I'm like, hey, overtake, slingshot engaged.
This is also coming from the guy, like the people running this joint were like, all right, let the people in the double seaters go first, and then he pointed to me, then I could follow them out. Green flag. Jessup is ramming us all our entire lane out onto the
God,
track, and I
Jessup.
turn around and be like, "Hey, stop it back there! I have to let these guys out first."
And
the guy yelled at me.
I give it the nuts again and plow back into them to get her going again.
So I will say it's interesting too. You mentioned the go-karts that the fellow Mandonians that are used to like a dry slick track kind of struggled on the dry slick conditions over at the fast track, and yours truly absolutely dominated it.
Well, to be
You're not
fair,
surprised though, Mason. You have real talent.
John, Mason's the only one who's been in a race car on a racetrack in racing conditions.
Becca should learn from her idol Jeff Gordon. Like, remember, always keep like an egg underneath the gas pedal. Easy
I was-
on gas.
By the
think-
last race, I was holding my own.
But
Mason, all
Mason
those
could
not
replays that you
pass
guys
me.
have been watching, all those, NASCAR replays for you and Becca, I mean, all I know is I've been seeing a lot of wrecked Jeff Gordon cars, so he must not have been that great back in the day.
there's a lot of controversy with the last electric go-kart finish, though. Mason claims to have beaten me, but the print-off once said that on the screen, the only thing that matters, the screen said I won. So controversy surrounds this whole final race.
I
They
believe
mixed you
Mason
and
over you.
Mason up.
Yeah, I was just
I
gonna say,
just
I'm
believe
pretty
what the
sure I believe
screen
Mason
said. It
over
said
that.
Jessup won, and I was like, okay.
I've seen Jessup's skills even like on video game stuff.
Oh,
not
I
it's
even-
not good.
I
I'm
remember
sorry,
that
guys.
third race when Jessup's name went to the top of the scoreboard. I'm like, how? He spun out in corner 4.
Because you were spinning out in corner 3.
No, Mason was
Remember,
trying to
it was
pass
all
me on
your
the
fault,
outside.
Becca. Remember, you were always spinning out,
Personally,
so
I
he had
think
to
if
avoid
Mason
you.
and I were out there alone, it would be very different.
So
Yeah, you would
essentially,
have been
Becca.
left.
So
No,
Becca,
I would have
essentially,
kept up. I would have just held the inside, and then when you went to go to the outside, I would have Ryan Newman'd you.
so essentially, Becca, just think of it this way. He was essentially Danica Patrick, who spins out when there's no wreck even around her, and she would just
Mhm.
randomly spin out. So he was essentially Danica Patrick it the whole time,
He was. Well, Mason and I were racing.
and then blaming it on everybody else.
You know, I will say at the Mario Kart track, though, I did not feel bad about giving that bump and run to Mason. I think that was probably one of the best executed bump and runs there could be in go-kart history. It was just, here they are, and here's me. Boo! I'm gonna use 12 wheels to turn this corner instead of 4.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I even used my boost, John. I used my boost to get
Good job.
through there. I
Proud
had
of
to. I mean, you have to take advantage of the situations when they present themselves.
This is true. Yeah. Well, we've covered our go-kart racing. We probably just half the former NASCAR community. And so we'll move on into our main topic, which since we were at the track for the 500 and at Volusia, I kind of wanted to discuss some like aspects of being at the track versus watching from home. And obviously, like this weekend was an eye-opening experience for me, being able to watch the race at the track for NASCAR. And I kind of want to get your guys' feedback on like your track experience versus how susceptible you are to like watching a race from home. Like if you had to choose, obviously you'd probably be at the track, but what kind of things do you focus on when you're watching a race from home? I'll start with John on this.
Oh, that's a good that's a really good point, Mason, because I feel like there's two things. So at the track, you definitely get to feel more of the fan experience as a whole, because you're not just there by yourself. You have other people around you. So you get more of the excitement level / entertainment level directly there. Now, also at the track, you also have the ability to partake in, adult beverages, snacks, food, other stuff from the track itself. Like there's certain stuff that you might have at home that you always go to, like you're to go to snacks or your beverage or anything else in that one too. But at the track, there might be more variety based to where you might venture out and try something different. So that's one thing that's a little bit different on there too. And then third of all, from I think the track versus the home perspective is a lot of times when you're at the track, you usually get some type of apparel, merchandise, souvenir, something from that too, especially if you're at an event that you usually typically don't go to where when you're at home watching it on TV, you don't obviously get to experience it from that level either. You might order it and it might come in or something else from there too. Now, the other side of it though, watching it from home versus at the track, typically when you watch from home, there's kind of two main things on here, whether it's a dirt track, whether it's a NASCAR race, whether it's any type of event. A lot of times, obviously with today's technology, we usually have either some type of playback or, some type of pause. So a lot of times if you're watching things, sometimes you watch them in tape delay. That's a big thing, obviously, because you'll get up and maybe you'll have to go to the bathroom, or maybe you'll have to, go do something else, or, oh, I had a phone call come in, I'm going to take a phone call, or I'm going to look at something else. So the distraction piece of it might be a little bit different from the at home versus, to not. Perfect example of that. I'm going to use an example here directly of Martinsville last year. So with the Martinsville fall race, when Ross Chastain did that move in turns 3 and 4 to make it into the final 4, it was hilarious because I was actually on tape delay on that one too. I was watching it a little bit behind to where the 4 of us were communicating, and I believe Becca and Jessup were on live at that time or not. And I was like, what happened? Because all of a sudden my phone started blowing up and I'm like, I still got like 5 laps left. It doesn't look like it's really that great. So I get down to the final lap and I'm like, I don't even know what they're talking about yet. And then obviously then it happened. So that obviously that's another area too, which you're not in sometimes real time. And the final thing here, directly from the at home versus the in-person piece of it, is that a lot of time at home, you can flip to different events as well. So a lot of times, obviously you're there, you're watching, one thing at one time, you're participating in that one event, to where if you're watching racing from home, and I've seen a lot of people do this, especially with the dirt car nationals, other events that were happening here in the fall. Some racers would even have 2 laptops set up on different TVs, to where they would be broadcasting one race on one TV and one race on another TV. So you're watching essentially 2 things at one time, or they'd flip back and forth, to where obviously at a track, it's a lot harder to do that when you're in person, unless you have it up on your phone in between, obviously events, or in between races, or in between anything that you're kind of participating in. So that's kind of the twofold differences, to where in person, you get to experience the actual experience itself as a whole. When you're at home, you get to experience it from a different viewpoint of the comfort of your house, comfort of home, or even from the physical of multiple events at one time.
Yeah, all good thoughts. I want to transition to Jessup on this, because he probably does more of the switching, especially with dirt track racing, watching multiple events in one night. How do you see watching racing from home, particularly dirt track racing in general, versus being at the track?
There's a couple different aspects to it for me. One is you really don't get a lot of different views. You basically get to watch what they're going to show you, and that's one aspect that's different from at the track. I can watch whatever I want to watch at the track, and that's kind of nice. Outside of that, just give me a quick second here. I'm buying stuff for DSTV right now, as I'm in the middle of the eBay war. We're down to the last 30 seconds.
This goes back to the how it's different being in there in person to being at home, because you're multitasking.
Yeah. And
While Jessup is busy in a bidding war, I'll go, because being at the track is always the better option. Just that fan experience, the things to do at the track. But obviously going to every NASCAR race or every dirt track race just isn't feasible. You'd have to win the lottery several times over to be able to do that kind of stuff. And how would you pick and choose what dirt track race to go? Because there's usually 5 or 6 different events at any given day of the week, right? So obviously being at the track is better, just because, at like NASCAR tracks like Daytona, they have huge big screen TVs that, so if the cars are on the backstretch, they look like little ants to you in the grandstands, because they're so far away from your vantage point. But with the big screens, you can see them up close and see how the racing on the backstretch is. And even under cautions, they have things to interact with the fans with under cautions, and replays at the track, and they do a really nice job with that fan experience at the track. And like Jessup said, when you're watching from home, you're at the bay of whatever they want to show you on TV. Whereas at the track, you can watch whatever the heck you want. You can be watching that crazy racing at 20th on back, where they're just slicing and dicing, and it looks crazy and super hairy. And if the cars touch just a little bit, you see that wiggle that typically on the broadcast, the TV broadcast of a NASCAR race, they're probably focused on your leader. So you wouldn't see that at that racing, the crazy racing action in the back of the pack. I like that kind of stuff, because you can watch whatever the heck you want, or you can focus on your favorite driver specifically. Whereas on the broadcast, again, they're probably going to be focused on your leaders. So, but obviously, each have their positives. Like when I watch from home, I'm typically multitasking. I'm usually cleaning, I'm usually playing with my dog, or sometimes I'm taking a nap because it's been a long day or a long Sunday afternoon, and I'm tired after cleaning all day, and I'll usually wake up just before the checkered flag. Obviously, it's kind of hard to take a nap at a NASCAR race, but each have their positives. But I think overall, being at the track is way better than watching from home.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. Yeah, Jessup, did you want to continue to build off of what you were saying a couple minutes ago?
Yeah. Now that this eBay bid's finally over, that was kind of wild. Got a new camera for the track. Anyways, watching racing at home is really different because you don't get a choice of where to watch. It's not told, you're basically given one spot to watch. And that's whatever the camera and the producer wants you to see. And while it's nice to be at home, you save time, money, stuff like that. It's kind of frustrating because you may not always get to see who you want to see. And that part's kind of challenging. But for me, myself, and Becca can attest to this, I watch about 4 different races at a time. And I see what I want to see, then I go to the next track. And I'll still leave the window open. I'll watch whatever I want to watch at that track. If it's not racing, I'll jump back to the other track or go to the next track and then so forth. It's kind of nice to be able to do that because then you can really narrow in what you want to watch or whatever specifics you want to watch. At the track, you get whatever the racing gives you, and you can pick what you want to watch. You can pick where you get to sit. It's all you choose type of experience. And then if you don't like the experience, guess what? You can leave whenever you want to. So it's both have their pros and cons to it.
Yeah, that's a good explanation of it. I'll explain like the NASCAR side of it and then the dirt track side of it. For me, I think from the NASCAR side of it, obviously I would pick to be at the track, but like Becca said, very expensive to do that. Kind of one of the aspects I liked, especially being at the 500, is that you don't have to deal with the commercial breaks. That's kind of nice to like not miss any of the racing action while you're at the track. And so it's like, you don't have to worry about like, oh geez, what if we miss a wreck or something like that? Or what if we miss a pass for the lead? Like we're there, right there. So we definitely won't miss a thing. So I thought that was a really cool aspect that you don't get that experience at home. While and like you guys have said, you can kind of focus on different areas of the track. If they're like racing for like 15th or 16th somewhere else besides the leaders, obviously you can focus on that and you can kind of divert your eyes wherever you want. As well as like for dirt track racing, similar aspects to it, like you kind of get to choose who you want to. I personally, when I watch dirt track racing online, I get frustrated because I always want to see where the battles are taking place in the middle of the field. And that's actually how I mainly do my video recording, is I focus on the battles and not usually just the front 2 or 3, unless they're battling, obviously. And so I get a little bit more like flustered. It's like, come on, I want to see so-and-so start to make his way through the field. And I get so flustered. It's like, move the camera back, or move it up or something like that. And so that's why I'm at the track more often than not, because I really just can't really sit at home and miss out on that experience. But that's just from my aspect of it. If I were able to have like 3 or 4 like different races at the same time, like Jessup in some nights, I probably would see that a little bit differently. So. But yeah, I definitely think that at the track experience, you definitely can't beat because you get to make it your own. I think that's a general consensus that we all have. So great points by all of you. So there was a little bit of winter racing that we weren't able to cover from our last episode. They just had the Working Man Nationals down at the dirt track at Las Vegas, and we had several of the folks down there. And just wanted to highlight a few of the winners here. Ryan Satter got a win and 3 top 5s down in the stock car. So congratulations to Ryan Satter on a great weekend down there. We also had guys like Kurt Becken, Troy Seapack, Jeremy Castro in the stock cars. Colin Hibden got a couple wins in a second in the modifieds. Brady Biella and Ty Clemens were also there. And then several of the Midwest modified sport mod type drivers. We had Aaron Blacklance down there, had a couple top 5s. Brady Biella was racing one of the Johnson's sport mods. Preston Carr got a win. And we also had Jake Smith and Chris Edmonds down there. So another nice representation of drivers down at the Working Man Nationals. And so then transitioning to some of the rumors and schedule releases, it's actually been kind of quiet on the schedule release front, but we have a couple things. We didn't get a chance to touch on the John Seitz Memorial adding super stocks for the race this year. We kind of talked about it a couple of times, how John Seitz raced a super stock, especially over at the Bemidji area where he's originally from. So what do you guys think of that addition to the Seitz race?
Well, he also ran a super stock over at Grand Forks too, because Grand Forks used to be a big super stock track during that event. Actually, they ran super stocks. So when Seitz Memorial came about, when John had passed, there was another special right before that that used to actually kind of take place during this period of time, and super stocks used to be part of that special with the late models. So for my personal opinion, I'm actually kind of looking forward to it because I like super stocks. So I've always been kind of that person on that one too. So I feel like it'll be a very interesting group of drivers that that might come over for that weekend, and running them all 3 days. We'll see how that goes as well. But yeah, it's going to be something new and exciting kind of this year, new and different. So I'm kind of excited to see how it comes about.
And there seemed to be a lot of great excitement for it too, being added to the weekend. So I think it'll be a great addition to the John Seitz Memorial. And plus that John actually raced a super stock, I think it's just a natural fit.
I would agree with Beck on that one too, since he actually raced super stocks and that was one of his big classes before he went to late models. I think it's a good fit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a good fit. It's concerning for me because I like sprint cars, and this could be a very formal way of removing a class that John did not race from the Seitz Memorial, which could hurt some feelings, but it's good. I mean, sometimes you got to make a little change to keep things fresh. It's a good way to honor that class and John, and gives the class a chance to honor John as well. I'm curious who will be drawn to this race now. That's kind of an interesting aspect that I guess maybe some people have looked at, but for me, I haven't really looked that closely at it. I'm assuming you'll pull the Alex and Greenbush guys, but outside of that, probably some Bemidji guys as well. But I'm not really sure who else you're going to pull, and I think that's going to be a fun aspect for the fans to really get to see when we get closer to that time, because it's kind of a wild card, which will make draw. Let me rephrase that. It's kind of a wild card that will draw some interest for the fans leading into that weekend.
Do you think it would draw someone like a Shane Sabraski, who races both a modified and a super stock, especially if they race separate shows, at least 2 out of the 3 nights?
Well, that depends which way Shane's car owner wants to go. I think really depends on that. There's plenty of other big shows that weekend that put out a good money as well that can interfere with those plans. One example would be the Northern Nationals, which basically runs 2 complete shows of modifieds that weekend, and I think the super stocks as well. But I think Shane, probably seeing that he probably hasn't raced the Seitz, I think it would be an attractive event for him and his sponsor to go to.
Yeah, I'd be cool to kind of see him make the way up there. And yeah, I think we'll definitely see some new faces. There's quite a few super stocks from the Bemidji and Brainerd area that I think would make the trip over, especially they've been asking for this for several years. And so I'm sure they'll get a good contingent of people. And with Chris Steppen kind of running that event, I'm sure he'll get a pool of drivers that he as company sponsors, FYE, that they'll probably make the trip over as well.
I'm wondering even about the South Dakota guys, because typically you have a lot of the some of the late model drivers that come up from right around that Aberdeen casino area, and Aberdeen still has a pretty strong field of super stock drivers. So I'm still kind of wondering if we're going to pull some of those guys up there too that weekend. Typically, a lot of those guys will come up for the 3 days.
Yep.
So that'll be kind of interesting too. But yeah, I think it'll be a very diverse field for super stock drivers, and it'll be interesting to see kind of the surprise names that pull through the back gate.
Yeah, I think, was it a few years ago they had, 210 cars, I think was the record.
Yeah, they had I think it was 205 total, somewhere in that range. And last year I know was what was last year, about 180, high 170, low 180, somewhere in that range, from total car count for the weekend. So it'll be interesting to see what they pull this year.
Does Grand Forks have the additional pit areas for potentially more cars?
No, so that's why I think Jess's point is really valid on this too. They typically will open it up a little bit more. They'll kind of like rope it off, and they might even take away maybe some more of the camping spots potentially, which is something what they might do. But the other thing though too is that I would not be surprised to hear of a class being dropped before that too. So we'll see what ends up happening.
Yeah, where the track is located, it's right next to I think it's a county jail that's right next to the track. And so
They're landlocked.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
county jail next to the track. And then obviously it's industrial beside there as well. And then they have that trailer court that's right behind the track. So the track pits can't be expanded out to the back. They can be expanded a little bit to the side. And I don't know if they'll contact, some of those businesses that are right next to there too, and maybe use them as part of a resource too for pit parking. I doubt it, but we'll see.
I think there was one year they had to utilize crossing the street for some of I think it was the
Yes.
sprint car haulers.
Correct. Yep. That was the year that they had all those cars, the 200 and some cars, they had to use that. So we'll see what they end up doing.
Yep. Yeah, so a fun addition to the John Seitz Memorial with Super Stocks this year. Be exciting to see how that turns out. Just a couple other quick releases. The only scheduled release that we've had in the last few weeks has been Cheyenne Speedway. They released their schedule, moving to Thursday nights and adding WISSOTA Amont's their schedule. So check out their Facebook page and see their schedule layout. We also have the Moonshine Mod Tour that has a 3-swing schedule right now. I believe one goes through North and South Dakota, and then 2 in the central Minnesota, and the other one in central Minnesota, and the other kind of in the Grand Forks, Greenbush area. And so exciting news there. And then I think the street stocks, WISSOTA street stocks, are becoming a regular class over at Buffalo River this year. And so they're going to be releasing their scheduled at the beginning of March. And so keep your eyes on their Facebook page as well for there.
Jumping back to schedules real quick. Has there been any word from the East about the NLRA or the NOSA groups? Because it seems like everything's really quiet and we are getting rather close to the beginning of the race season with no confirmed schedules being put out yet.
I haven't
seen
heard
anything.
anything.
Yeah, I haven't seen or heard anything either.
Is that something that those drivers need to be concerned about? Or because it's got to be off-putting for the fans that follow those series.
Yeah, I know, like track schedule wise, typically the Eastern North Dakota tracks are some of the later ones. And usually like Ada and River, for example, they release theirs at their banquet, which is normally at the end of March. So, but NLRA and NOSA usually are earlier in the winter months. So yeah, I haven't really heard anything on either of those schedules as of yet. Hopefully something comes out in the next week or two. So we're actually recording this on the night that we're going to be attending the Jamestown Speedway banquet for 2022. So we'll hope to see a lot of you there. Cheyenne Speedway's got their banquet coming up the next week, and I will be at that. And I believe there's a couple other banquets around the region. I know Montevideo's got their banquet scheduled in the next couple weeks. And so banquet season is still upon us, kind of carries all the way through from, I think Mandan's usually the first one, like October, and then everyone else kind of filters through the remainder of the off season. Do we have any wins of the week from our weekend in Florida or from watching NASCAR or something like that? Who wants to go first on that?
I'll go with Hudson O'Neill.
It's a good one.
I think it was like, what, 23rd to 1st?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there was some passing.
Yeah.
Okay, my win of the week, I'm going to give it to Ricky Thornton Jr. He's had a very, very nice start to his 2023 late model season. And it looks like he may be a title contender this year. So we'll see.
I guess he passed some cars too.
I think he started 26th and finished 3rd. So yeah, I'd say he passed some cars. My wins of the week go to particularly some I'd say the Midwest, the locals. Amber Paul-Kane finished 6th in her ARCA race. I believe that was on Saturday afternoon last weekend. And then Bryce Hagelberg finished 16th. He ran much higher than that most of the day, but I didn't get to see the end of that race. We were on our way to Volusia. So I don't know exactly what happened to him, if he fell back or missed the draft or what. And then I also thought this was kind of interesting. Former celebrity Frankie Muniz actually also had a really good showing at Daytona in his ARCA race. He finished 11th. So those are my wins of the week.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, all good winners. I'll give mine to Ricky Stenhouse for getting the Daytona 500. It was awesome to see kind of I would say an underdog team, JTG Doherty Racing, get into victory lane. And Ricky's a really good restrictor plate racer. And so not a complete surprise to see him up at the front. I actually picked him on my NASCAR fantasy team. So win for me there. But big congrats to Ricky Stenhouse and the entire 47 racing team. That was really cool to see and witness that in person. And so the last thing I wanted to bring up, a lot of you have probably heard the news of Corey Lee. One of his daughters, Leighton Lee, was diagnosed with I believe it's a cancer or a tumor on her brain. And so they're right now in the hospital in the Minneapolis area. And so I'm going to drop the link. Outlaw Graphics is putting together some shirts to raise funds to support their medical expenses. And so I wanted to bring that up. Just a fellow racing family. I know the Lees support us. They watch our podcast quite a bit. And so I want to send our well wishes and hope to see continued progress for Leighton and her recovery. And so I'll drop that link in the show notes. Outside of that, does anyone else have anything before we close out episode 4?
So many things, so little time.
I do want to give a shout out. As you probably know, I'm in a different location. Shout out to the Fromkeys, Benji and Bobby N, for letting me use their space for podcasting, as I'm dog sitting this weekend. And so, yeah, a new location for the Track Packers. Outside of that, I think that covers it for episode 4. Once again, be sure to like, share, and comment on the podcast. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes. We'd greatly appreciate that. And we always love to hear your feedback and what we can talk about. Up until then, hope you guys are staying warm, and we hope to see you out there packing the tracks.